This podcast features criminologists discussing sensitive themes and topics. Listener discretion is advised. When women at the Yale Fertility Clinic experienced excruciating procedures, was a well-loved nurse the one to blame? This is the Donna Monticone story. Good morning, Meghan.
Oh, good morning.
I like your hair curly.
Thank you. It's funny, I get compliments on it curly, but of course, because it's my natural hair, I can't stand it.
Yes, I don't think I've seen it straight in a while. No time anymore, right?
Nope. As soon as I had Hannah, that was it. There's been no blow drying. I think I've done my hair once, maybe twice, and that was because I did, like one of those television shows. Mm-hmm. And so I just had to do my hair, but otherwise, this is it. This is what you get now.
Excellent. Welcome to my world.
Your hair's never curly, though. You just tie yours back. And you always used to tell me, by the way, that you had curly hair, but your hair is not curly. Your hair is wavy by comparison to mine. So you're confusing curls with waves.
All right. Well, the listeners are not here to talk about our hair, Meghan. The listeners are here.
Good point. Good point.
Have you listened to the Retrievals podcast?
No, but if you recall, I think you told me not to.
Okay.
Because you told me you were covering it. So I try not, when you tell me not to because you're going to cover something, I really try to wait.
I'm glad I did. So I had seen this podcast come up on my feed,
yes.
And I just kept ignoring it, just because I have so many other things to listen to. But then so many of our listeners were telling us we had to listen to it. Can you please cover this? So I was like, all right, fine. So I listened. And I was absolutely floored. Once I listened, I knew this was going to be a case I needed to dive deeper into and research. Now, this case, I would say, is probably unlike any we've covered before.
Oh.
Or at least any I could think of. It's a very unique case.
Okay.
And we know we love to talk about justice and what justice actually means. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the perfect case in which to do so.
Oh, okay.
So there's very little information about Donna's upbringing or childhood, so I won't spend too much time there. So I'll tell you what I know, and then we'll get into today's story.
Okay.
Donna graduated from Bridgeport Hospital School of Nursing in 2015 and was granted a registered nursing license in 2016. And Bridgeport is in Connecticut. At the time of the events we're discussing, Donna had 3 children and was going through a long and contentious divorce. And this is sometime around 2020. During this rough time in her life, she also got a job as a nurse at the prestigious Yale Reproductive Endocrinology and Fertility Clinic. Have you heard of this place?
I have not, but if it's
the Yale,
I would imagine it is prestigious.
Yeah, although that's a long name, it's more commonly referred to as the Yale Fertility Center.
Okay.
Now, in this job, among other duties, Donna was responsible for ordering and keeping the inventory on controlled substances. She also worked directly with patients. And she was loved by everybody. Many patients said she was warm and helpful and really provided support during a tough time in their lives. One of the many ways that she provided support was during patient egg retrievals. So during the patient egg retrieval process, she would be the nurse that would, be there with the patient to kind of walk them through it.
Right, okay.
And for those listeners who may not know, patients going through in vitro fertilization or IVF, they have this procedure called the egg retrieval. So what happens is patients will typically undergo extensive testing. Then they take medication for ovarian stimulation and egg maturation. After the eggs are mature, there's usually a very narrow window of time where the eggs can be retrieved from the ovaries and still be viable for fertilization. This procedure involves doctors using transvaginal ultrasound to locate the eggs before they insert a long, thin needle through the vaginal wall and into the ovaries. And this is all done to retrieve the eggs out of the follicles. Mm-hmm. Now, needless to say, this is an incredibly painful process. And because it is, patients are typically sedated.
Right.
The Yale Clinic in particular uses a combination of fentanyl for pain and midazolam for relaxation and memory loss. Some clinics actually use general anesthesia, which puts the patients completely out. But regardless of the practice, no patients who get this procedure of egg retrieval are fully conscious during the procedure. So the majority of patients have no memory at all of the procedure and certainly don't feel pain.
Oh, okay.
There are some women that do recall a bit. It's almost like in that twilight phase.
Mm-hmm.
but they typically do not feel any pain of the procedure.
Okay.
However, at Donna's clinic, some women who underwent egg retrievals reported a very different and harrowing experience. And you can hear some of these firsthand accounts on episode 1 of the Retrievals podcast.
Ugh.
And that was a primary source for today's episode. And in this particular podcast episode, patients describe excruciating pain and being fully awake and aware during the procedure, which is not supposed to happen. And while many women said that they knew that it wasn't supposed to be painful, they say they didn't say anything or complain because for them, this was their only possible chance at having a child. And they didn't want to seem weak and they wanted to just power through. And we're both mothers. We know, like, you'll do anything to, get that baby at that point.
Yes, I do.
And for those that did complain or cry out during the procedure, they were later told that they likely just weren't reacting to the medication as expected. So they were told maybe they had a low pain threshold, or maybe the medications just simply haven't worked for them.
Do we know how many people this was, just out of curiosity? Or is there any estimate, or should I wait on that?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
I'd say even one would be enough.
No, absolutely. When you're saying these numbers, I'm just curious about
No,
how
I
many,
know.
But...
Yeah. Now, one patient recalled, quote, "I remember yelling and then really looking in confusion at the attending nurse and her saying, 'I'm sorry, I'm giving you the most that I can legally give you.'" And I spoke to a few friends about this who have gone through this procedure, and they say that this is absolutely terrifying because the process is so traumatic on its own. And then you're awake and then you're being gaslit when you're complaining about pain.
Oh, yeah, this is awful.
Yeah. So what's going on at this clinic? Did they just happen to have a rash of patients with low pain tolerance or high threshold for the drugs?
No, I don't think so, but go ahead.
Nope, not at all, Meghan. The problem was, you guessed it, Donna Monticone.
So was she pulling their drugs? Is that what happened? Or she wasn't administering it? This is awful already.
Yeah. So beginning around June of 2020, Donna, who had become addicted to pain meds after she had surgery a few years prior, she began stealing fentanyl for her own use by using a syringe to withdraw the narcotics from the vials. Then she would inject saline to appear that nothing was missing.
Oh my God.
Now, unfortunately for many of the patients at the clinic, this meant that 75% of the fentanyl given during egg retrievals between June of 2020 and October of 2020 had been swapped with saline. Just so everyone knows, saline is simply a mix of salt and water that is often used just to replenish fluids. Absolutely no pain relief.
Oh my gosh. These poor women.
Yes. So we're talking about 5 months worth of procedures. And I looked really hard to find exactly how many retrievals were done at Yale during this time, but I simply could not find that information. But I think it's safe to say that this affected a lot of women.
Wow, this is awful.
At a press conference, Assistant U.S. Attorney Ray Miller reported that, quote, "Some of these bottles contain diluted fentanyl, while others contain no drug at all and just contain saline." He went on to say that the defendant knew that the vials of fentanyl that she was replacing would be used in surgical procedures and that the absence of an anesthetic drug during the outpatient procedure would likely cause serious bodily injury to the patient.
Yeah, this is awful. Wow. I mean, with that kind of knowledge, that kind of inside knowledge, to be able to witness these women in excruciating pain, I'm really kind of blown away by this. Just when I think I've seen or heard it all,
Yep.
and I can't be shocked, I still can.
Yep. That's why I find what we do so interesting, because we're shocked and learning all the time.
So how was Donna discovered?
Well, it was all thanks to one anesthesiologist who noticed that the top came off a vial a bit too easy. Now, this prompted the doctor to open an investigation, which is amazing that doctor didn't just keep moving on with their life.
Yeah, wow.
If you see something, say something. Excellent job, doctor. Now, what was found was that since Donna had full access to the Yale Fertility Center's outpatient surgical facilities, she had figured out a way to swap the fentanyl for saline when nobody was around. At one point, she was swapping the vials up to 4 times a day, and then she would take it a step further and she would bring the fentanyl vials home and swap the saline with the fentanyl in her own home.
How did they discover that how did they discover it was her and whatnot? Did they have any surveillance here, or they just were able to say, hey, it goes missing and it's always Donna on shift?
Yeah, I think it was some good old-fashioned investigation, but also when confronted, Donna at first denied it. but they made her do a toxicology screen, which revealed that her body contained opioids. And that is when she indeed confessed about taking the fentanyl. And at this point, she said she was an addict as well.
Wow.
It's so crazy to me, the audacity to take the vials of fentanyl home, tamper with them, and then bring them back to work and put them in the storage room. The fact that no one saw that happening either is quite shocking.
So no one did see that happening. Okay, yeah. That's part of my question is how was it, revealed?
Mm-hmm. After pleading guilty in a federal court to tampering with a consumer product in March of 2021, Donna was facing a 10-year prison sentence and having to pay a $250,000 fine in restitution. At her hearing, her public defender told the judge that during Donna's employment at Yale, the single mother had been dealing with custody battles, and that the Department of Children and Families had found that her ex-husband was both physical and emotionally abusive.
Okay, so they're looking to mitigate her punishment here. I see.
Yeah, so they were saying that for the past 7 years, her ex-husband was neglectful and abusive to her and her 3 children. And they were pretty much arguing that the knowledge of her children's lack of safety when visiting their father had put her under an intense amount of stress, which led to this indiscretion, as they would say. And the lawyer went on to say that this became especially hard for Donna in 2020, as at one point during visitation, her ex-husband claimed he had just had a stomach bug while watching the children, but in reality, he had had COVID. And this was in a time before there were vaccines and thousands of people were dying and everything was so unknown. So for Donna, this really caused her to panic. Donna herself even pled with the judge for leniency, saying that while she had been addicted to painkillers in the past, she had gone to treatment and got clean. However, she had been drowning in stress at the time of her theft because of the divorce and her children's safety. That pushed her to this breaking point. And when she was surrounded by this easily accessible painkiller, she reverted back to her addiction.
Well, look, we know that addiction is very serious, and addiction is a very serious disease. Many of us have family and friends who have addiction issues, and I would never want to minimize the seriousness of addiction whatsoever. However, there is a line between your addiction and, unfortunately, personal harm that you're doing, and when you're doing harm to others. And that is for the law to step in. So I don't know what kind of leniency they might afford because of serious addiction, but what she did is very hard to mitigate by addiction because of the serious harm that she caused to others. And I think it's exacerbated, Amy, by the fact that she witnessed the harm.
Yes, she was right there.
And watched people suffer. So I think that kind of mitigates addiction in some ways, what she, you know what I mean? What she actually did.
Yeah, it almost brings another level of malice into it when she was the one comforting the women when they were in their pain.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Donna and her counsel also pleaded with the judge, saying that if she was sentenced to an extended time of incarceration, her 3 children would be put in physically and mentally unsafe conditions with their father full time. Now, I don't know why that's true, because if the children's father was in fact abusive, then he would lose custody of them. So I don't really understand that argument.
Yeah, I was going to ask if that was ever proven. So, okay.
Yeah.
But also realizing that she would lose her children regardless because of what she had done, because of addiction, because she herself would be creating an unsafe environment for them as well.
You would think. We'll get to that.
Okay.
To Donna's credit, she did go to treatment at an Institute of Living program, and she took some college classes after her theft was exposed. But as much as she was showing that she was ready to be a changed person, many of the victims spoke during the court proceedings, and their testimonies were harrowing. A woman identified as Victim 1, who was a physician herself, described the pain caused after the saline-infused procedure as the most excruciating. And she knew the difference because she was a doctor herself, and the saline vial she had been administered was for her second egg extraction. So she had done this already, and she knew what to expect.
Of course.
So in her first procedure, she had no memory or pain, but after the second procedure, she was dealing with both physical and psychological issues. She even told the nurses that they had given her saline, but they did not believe her. She said that after the procedure, she was hospitalized and treated like an addict, and she could not communicate because of the amount of pain that she was in.
Oh my goodness.
A second woman, who was identified as Victim 2, said that she developed a relationship with Donna and several of the other nurses over the 7 years that she was working with the clinic. And prior to her saline-induced egg retrieval, she claimed that Donna was aware that the victim had endured 3 failed pregnancies. And after the procedure, victim 2 said that she woke up in unbearable pain, screaming out.
This is awful. And I think that's what I'm saying. What makes it worse is that she knew the pain that these women had experienced already. It's heartbreaking.
Further, victim 2 stated, quote, she chose fentanyl out of all drugs to use to cope with her issues. One dose of fentanyl could have killed her. And if she would have died, she did not even think of her children. Because, Donna was arguing that she can't go to prison because of her children, but here she was taking fentanyl.
Right.
Victim 3 then testified that after the procedure, she did get pregnant, and she was pregnant for 17 weeks and 5 days until, unfortunately, she lost the child. She said after being treated like she was overreacting, she now suffers from panic attacks when going through any surgical appointments because she always fears that the medication will not be enough. She went on to say, quote, I want her to know that she has hurt me. She has hurt my family. And while the judge told Donna, quote, this isn't a get out of jail free card because you have children, many were shocked at the outcome. Ready for this?
No. I had a feeling. Okay.
She was required to pay $637.56 of the $250,000 in restitution, and she was ordered to be incarcerated for 4 weekends, which would be scheduled to correspond with her custody schedule.
You're kidding me.
I didn't even know this. Have you heard of this before? Because I never heard of a sentencing structure in which you could be incarcerated for 4 alternating weekends.
I have heard of, sentencing structures where you could serve weekends.
Huh.
It's rare, I think, and I haven't actually heard it used in a while. And why only $637? And why such a light sentence? This is really no sentence at all. This is, I have to say, just based on the facts I heard, I think this is reprehensible.
And after incarceration, she would be on home confinement for 3 months and unsupervised release for 3 years. She was also ordered to complete 100 hours of community service within the first year and 3 months of home confinement within the supervised release period.
I feel like this has to be a case where the judge just simply did not understand the real harm that was done. And or minimizing the harm, or I just do not think that this, I'm sure we'll discuss it at the end, but this seems entirely inappropriate for her crime to me.
And I'm with you that I think the sentence seems too lenient. But surprisingly, many of the victims felt that it was justice. In fact, one of the victims worked in addiction and mental health services, and she felt that any amount of jail time was inappropriate because Donna was clearly suffering from addiction, which is a disease that needs to be treated and not punished. And I think we agree with that addiction is a disease.
Yes.
However, the pain inflicted in this case just seems too great to have addiction mitigate any of her punishment.
I have to say I commend those victims. That is a very charitable and amazing gift that they would give her.
And here we see the struggle between balancing justice for the victims and treatment for the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Because this theme comes up over and over again in our classes and in our episodes. But regardless of the public opinion, or regardless of our opinions even, Donna was incredibly lucky and privileged to get this sentence. Now, we know that not all women get the luxury of having a reduced or lenient sentence simply because they are parents, or more so because they are primary caregivers. In fact, one report notes that 58% of all women in U.S. prisons are mothers, and 80% of the women who will go to jail are mothers. Furthermore, over 50,000 pregnant women will begin their jail and or prison time. And this is because many can't afford bail. So not everyone's as lucky as Donna was.
I'm sorry. What's
Sure.
that stat? Go back. 58% of, I know 80% of women in jail are mothers, but what's the 58%?
58% of all women in U.S. prisons.
Are mothers?
Yes.
But then what's the second stat?
So 58% of all women in prison, 80% of women who are in jail.
Jail versus prison.
Yes.
Got it. I didn't hear that. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, this might be something people know, but might not, because I teach it in my class. Prison is longer term for people that are sentenced to a year or more typically, whereas jail is shorter term, people sentenced to a year or less, or awaiting trial or awaiting transfer. Okay, so it's clear that most women are primary caregivers for their children, and many leave their kids with unstable care when they are incarcerated. Now, this is a huge problem in our country, and one that needs to be addressed for sure.
Yes.
But as much as Donna was very lucky to be able to provide care for her children while serving her sentence, what would justice look like for the patients that Donna caused so much physical and emotional pain to? Now, we heard from that one victim who worked in the addiction field, and she believed that this sentence was just, but she was not the only victim.
No.
And this was a little more complicated because in this situation, all of the victims desperately wanted to be mothers, and this procedure was their only hope for getting there. And Donna was given a lenient sentence to be with her children when she was kind of taking that away from others. Get this, Meghan. Donna herself had gone through IVF, might I add, with proper sedation.
Ugh.
Now, does this make it worse? Some people say it did because she knew the pain and the agony that went along with trying to conceive a child.
I agree.
So her victims who felt really connected to Donna and who loved Donna said that the fact that she had this unique understanding of the emotional toll and struggle of IVF makes the sense of betrayal even deeper because she stole their medications, made them suffer, knowing what suffering they were already going through.
I think it's awful.
And as I mentioned, but I think it bears repeating, she administered the drugs herself during some of these procedures, knowing full well that there was just saline in the bottle. So not only did she quietly watch their pain, she was the one who was disregarding their pain and essentially gaslighting these women when they complained. Now, one can argue that it wasn't just Donna who was at fault here. Although Donna perpetrated the actual crime for over 5 months, the Yale Clinic has some responsibility as well. For one, they didn't listen to their patients or investigate when their patients were screaming out in pain during procedures. They simply told the women maybe they were pain intolerant, or they just simply disregarded the women instead of looking into the fact that the medication might be the problem.
I agree. I think they bear some responsibility here for sure.
Also, Donna was able to tamper with the medication for 5 months before it was being detected. She even took some of the vials to her home. So this means that nobody was noticing vials missing off the shelves and then being put back.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a controlled substance.
A very serious one. Oh my gosh, yeah.
In fact, accounting for drugs was so poor at the Yale Clinic that many other drugs, besides the tampered fentanyl, went missing during the time that Donna was employed there. So after she was discovered, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, conducted an audit that showed some other stuff missing at the clinic as well.
Oh, so there were other perpetrators as well, you're saying? Oh.
Well, I don't know. It could have been Donna, could have been other perpetrators. We simply can't know. But what I can tell you is among the drugs, missing was 35% of fentanyl, 24% of the midazolam, and 6% of the ketamine.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they have a problem with security issue. They have like a security problem here. There doesn't seem to be any kind of accounting or not a strong sense of like checks and balances here too. Like someone, you know what I mean, checks the drugs, someone else. Yeah. Oversight, you know. Again,
like whether Donna was responsible for these, I can't say, but it certainly does show a lack of accounting and the possibility that this was a further reaching problem.
Yeah.
2 years after being caught, in October of 2022, United States Attorney for the District of Connecticut announced that Yale University, on behalf of Yale Medicine and the Yale Fertility Center, entered into a civil settlement agreement with federal government in which they agreed to pay a total of $308,250 to resolve allegations that have violated civil provisions of the Controlled Substances Act. Mm-hmm. Now, it's unclear if this money went to the victims or if it just went to the federal government, but I would hope that at least part of it went to the victims.
Right.
The settlement also resolved allegations that Yale failed to maintain complete and accurate records concerning the controlled substances that it purchased and dispensed at the Yale Fertility Center. Mm-hmm. Lastly, this also resolves the allegation that they failed to provide effective controls and procedures to guard against theft and diversion of controlled substances. While this case is certainly unique, Donna is not alone in her issues and struggles with substance addiction. Research shows that between 8 and 15% of healthcare professionals will develop a substance use disorder during their careers.
Wow.
And might I mention, this is grossly underreported, as we know.
Yeah, wow.
So if the statistics are saying 8 to 15%, it's going to be much higher.
Yep.
And this includes at least 1 in 10 physicians and 1 in 5 nurses.
Whoa.
Those numbers are big.
That's big. Those are big numbers.
In the United States alone, 1.3 to 2.3 million healthcare workers are either using drugs and or alcohol.
So I would imagine that problem is twofold. I would imagine the reasons are twofold. And I would imagine, if I had to, that it was one, because of the high stress level of their jobs. Mm-hmm. but also to then the access that they have to medication. So there's, you know what I mean, like a cause and then an opportunity in that.
You're right. With those risk factors, you would think maybe we would provide more support. But, substance use is a workplace hazard for healthcare workers, clearly, but it's largely unaddressed. Opioids like fentanyl are the most common drugs diverted from healthcare facilities. And while some organizations have taken steps to make it difficult to divert medications, by monitoring risk factors and breaks in care, there is still a long way to go on this problem.
I would love to see it be twofold, that they would both monitor better, right, surveillance, but also provide support to help mitigate some of the, the possible causes.
Yes. Yeah, I think perhaps a place for more policies is in ensuring that healthcare workers who are suffering either don't turn to substance diversion or are able to receive the treatment and support they need. But this could be a tricky issue because, number one, suffering can be hard to identify. But I'm also wondering if healthcare workers would lose their licenses if they sought help for substance abuse.
Right.
Now, I know that police and firemen are deemed unfit for service if they do so. So I'm sure some of our listeners are in the nursing industry or the healthcare industry, and they could shed some light. But I would imagine that this puts them in a tricky situation because while they might want to go for help, they're fearing losing their career.
But, policemen and firefighters, I believe that there's more of an open door policy now in terms of, because it's been acknowledged that there's a high level of alcohol use. I believe they have more treatment options without being as punitive. It might be like a temporary, like if someone's unfit for duty at the time, it's temporary. But you're not losing your job anymore. So I'd love to see that could be translated as well to healthcare workers.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to be fearful.
But you also have to imagine the stigma that might come with it as well. So it's just a tricky situation.
Yeah. It is tricky. I guess I just would love to see more open treatment instead of, it being so stigmatized and then shamed. And then you have situations like this one, And
I think another issue that bears emphasis is that the women were being gaslit in these medical spaces. Pain is often ignored and minimized, and sometimes complaints are blamed on mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And this kind of is similar to what we talk about in a lot of cases where women who are murdered, their cases are quickly deemed death by suicide.
Yes.
Right? Such as Ellen Ray Greenberg, Lavina Johnson, Rebecca Zahaw, right? Yeah. Going back to this idea that women are hysterical or they can't handle themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I have a feeling I know what you think here, but, did the system get it right? This is a really tough one because Donna did a terrible thing. That is very clear. But what kind of punishment does someone like Donna deserve? I would imagine she got her RN license revoked. I don't think she can still practice medicine. I don't have confirmation of that, but to me, that seems like that would be the obvious outcome.
I am sure that she cannot practice, and I think that is totally appropriate given what she did. She abused her job. Abused her job, she abused these women as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think there's any way that she should be able to practice again. I would agree with that.
Now, obviously the sentence is too lenient, but I think it's important to look at all sides here. If she was sent to jail for a long period of time, would that actually help anyone? I mean, it's likely that it wouldn't allow her to recover from her substance use disorder. It wouldn't help her children who would need a caregiver, and it wouldn't hold Yale any more accountable. I mean, it also wouldn't take away the victim's trauma. It wouldn't secure opioids more effectively. So this is one of those questions like, what would be the purpose of punishment? Would it be deterrence or just straight up retribution?
Okay. That's exactly where I was going, just so you know. Because we've talked about the purposes of punishment before, too. So for anyone who doesn't know, the purposes are deterrence, retribution, rehabilitation, incapacitation, and then a fifth rationale in more recent times is restorative justice. So punishment should accomplish some of those goals, right? And I think they're all important. So the problem for me, and not every punishment can achieve all of those goals, right? But the problem for me is that I don't think that the punishment is a deterrent. I think appropriately here, there should be rehabilitation, but I think there needs to be deterrence. And so to prevent future crime, there has to be this deterrent aspect. And I don't think that the punishment here provides a valuable deterrent. And that's why I'm troubled by it. I also think it's not, so when we say retribution, people always think retribution means revenge. It's not supposed to mean that. It's supposed to mean a proportionate punishment because it's just. So I don't think that given the harm that she caused, this achieves retribution. And for me, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't looking for Donna to serve 10 years and be the most punitive, but I don't think this punishment sends a clear enough message about the harm that she did, while also accounting for addiction. And I sincerely hope she receives treatment and is rehabilitated. And I believe she could be valuable. She can still be a good mother. But for me, this punishment just does not achieve true justice. However, that being said, I'm not one of the victims. So if most of the victims feel that it does, then perhaps that's for them to say and not for me.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point because a lot of the ways we look at justice, really, we should put the victims at the center. The problem in a case like this is there are several victims. And some of the victims, I think, feel that this punishment was too lenient, while others feel like it was okay because she's suffering from a disease. Now, I just want to touch on deterrence for a minute because there's two types of deterrence, right? There's specific deterrence and general deterrence. Now, I think you were focusing more on general deterrence in that her punishment being so lenient doesn't send the message to other healthcare providers that if you do this, you're going to get in big trouble, right? It's sending this message.
I was actually...
You were talking about specific?
No, I was speaking about both.
Okay.
Specifically, I don't think it sends enough of a message to her.
Oh, gotcha. So you think, so yeah.
I think both. I was talking about both general and specific deterrence.
Okay. So specific deterrence is punishing someone to deter them from committing a crime again. And yes, I do not think it fits either one. As I mentioned, I don't think she will be allowed back in the healthcare field. But if she were, I do think that she is capable of doing this again.
That's my point. So I believe that is true. And I believe she's capable because there wasn't a strong enough deterrent value sent in her punishment, to be honest. So, yeah, I have concerns. I have many concerns about her going forward, to be honest.
And I'm not sure how much remorse she showed. It's very possible that she's remorseful and the media just chose not to report on that. It's also possible she's been keeping a little more quiet, but I would hope that she gets the treatment she needs and also shows a higher level of remorse.
Before we get there, do we know anything about her sentencing? If she made a statement on the record, was there an apology or that wasn't available?
Not that I found. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just, in my research, I didn't come across that.
Did you listen to the Retrievals?
Yes, I did. I listened to, I believe, most of it, but I was really interested on what the victims had to say.
Yeah, of course. I have to tell you now, normally I run out and listen to these. I'm not going to listen to this podcast. I don't think I can for some reason. No. This one, it bothers me, and I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends, like I said, who have gone through this, and they can't listen to it either because it's just brings up so much trauma from these procedures to begin with. And then this adds a whole nother layer to it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I was lucky to not be somebody who needed to go through these procedures to have my children, but many people close to me did. And it is a very lonely and draining experience, especially for women who have been doing it unsuccessfully for years. So I just wanted to add some places for support that women can go who are experiencing these struggles.
Nice.
Fertilityoutloud.com is a resource for women who are experiencing many different types of fertility struggles. And there's a lot of resources on where you can get the help and support you need. And then there's also a place called Resolve. It's the National Infertility Association. And my loved ones have found great support in both of those areas. So I just wanted to share those resources.
Oh, that's great, Amy. Okay, so this case is relatively new, so I guess we don't really know what happened to Donna yet, right? It's only been a couple of years, and my heart goes out to many of the people involved here, and my heart just really goes out to the people involved here, and I really hope that they have recovered, found recovery, found ways to go on, found ways to cope, because I know that this is a very long-term healing process, and more so than anything, I hope that they found... It doesn't matter, like I said, what I think about the sentence, but I hope that they found, some type of healing, some type of comfort, some type of justice in what happened. And I just want to end by saying that I sincerely hope that Donna is able to overcome her addiction issues, to come back into society, be a good mother, and, be able to help, even if it's not as a nurse, but be productive in society. So wishing her punishment doesn't mean I don't also wish her success, because I do. So I hope that something we can find in the long term here.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do hope that Donna receives the help that she needs, and I hope the victims are able to find some way to heal and move forward from this. I also think that because of this case and because of podcasts like the Retrievals, other people will be deterred from doing this, and there will also be stricter rules surrounding the upkeep and distribution of controlled substances. So
Right.
I do want to mention that I think there's a lot of value in sharing these types of stories, and I think there's a lot of policy change because of stories like this.
Well said. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you or anyone you know are struggling with substance abuse, there are a lot of resources. In the U.S., you can always dial 988, which is a crisis lifeline. And lastly, there's a website called findtreatment.gov, and you can find help for whatever you need help with. It is an invaluable resource. So I just wanted to share some of those resources for our listeners and anyone they might know that is going through any of these struggles. Meghan, before we head out today, though, let's take one question.
Okay. What do we have?
This is a pretty straightforward question we have today. What is the best movie you've seen recently? Didn't you just see a movie like yesterday?
I was going to say, first of all, it's a great question for me. You know, I haven't been to a movie in several months. And James and I had our first date night just recently. And we saw Alien. And it's the new one, Alien Romulus. What'd you say?
I would never see that movie. Like, not if someone paid me.
I am a horror movie buff. And the Alien movies were some of my favorite, like the originals. And this one was absolutely terrifying. I was holding on to James, and like, normally I'm not that scared because I love horror movies. So for me, that actually means it was a great movie, because in a horror movie, I kind of want to be scared. It's the sci-fi. I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. So that was a great question for me. And I'm just excited that I got to go to a movie and I didn't fall asleep during it.
So I don't usually watch movies, but I've watched two movies within the last few days. One of them was on a flight home from Indiana. I watched Mother's Instinct. Have you heard it?
No.
With Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain. It's kind of like a drama thriller. I think you would like it.
Okay.
I don't know if it's on Netflix, but anyway, I think you would like it. It's kind of a thriller. It's kind of dark. So watch it and let me know. And then yesterday I watched Ace Ventura for the first time in like 20 years.
I absolutely hated that movie. I don't like comedy like that.
Yeah, like over the top kind of comedy.
Yeah, like that kind of slapstick. It's just not for me. But I understand everybody else does, and I am like totally alone there.
Yeah.
And I know you liked that movie, right?
I don't love it, but it's silly. My kids thought it was hilarious. And it's just funny to see the ratings, because it was rated PG-13. But it was so inappropriate. It would be rated like double R if it was today's movie. It's just so funny how the ratings have changed so much.
Yeah, okay. And to see like whether these things stand the test of time is always funny. To watch what was funny to us like 25, 30 years ago or something. Like,
yeah.
Is it still funny now?
Yeah, there were definitely
a little different, right?
There were definitely many times where I had to like cover Ethan's eyes for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a good question. I like ones like that. A
Yes,
good way
thank
to
you.
end kind of a heavier episode too.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope to catch you next time on Women in Crime.
Women in Crime is written and hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer is James Varga. Script editing is by Abagail Belcastro. Audio editing is by Siler Burr and Jose Alfonzo. And music is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to follow and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as exclusive full-length episodes, lectures, a book club, and virtual happy hours with Meghan and Amy. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenandcrime.
Sources for today's episode include the Retrievals podcast, bioethicstoday.org, Dea.gov, AP News, newhavenindependent.org, Prison Policy Initiative, and the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health.